you're going to disprove more than you prove, but that's a good thing as well.
Yeah.
Because you learn about things that just don't work. And at the end of the day, we all want to find something that is going to work and we're going to have confidence in, because we're putting our own money at risk. So absolutely, we want to make sure it works.
This is the How to Trade Stocks and Options podcast, brought to you by 10MinuteStockTrader.com, where we cover finance, stocks, options, entrepreneurship, education, and money. And here's your host, voted one of the top 100 people in finance, Christopher Ewell. Hey there, traders. Welcome back to today's How to Trade Stocks and Options podcast. Today, we have a special lesson for you. I'm putting it here on the podcast because I really believe that this is going to provide you massive, massive value. And that's what I'm trying to do here. And hey, listen, if this podcast was useful to you at all, I really highly suggest that you go check out the full trading course at AIStockTradingSystem.com. That's AIStockTradingSystem.com. Markets are people. People are predictable. Outlier can show you how to track market fear and greed with artificial intelligence on over 1,300 of the largest market cap names. Visit outlier.com to learn more. That's OVTLYR.com. They have a free pilot program for the rest of 2021, so you can get access to right now at OVTLYR.com. That's OVTLYR.com. Hey, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you'll be notified every time we give you more tools, tips, and tricks to help you trade faster and trade smarter every single week. Hey there, traders. Welcome back to today's How to Trade Stocks Options podcast. Today, we have a special guest coming to us all the way from Australia, Stuart McPhee from stuartmcphee.com, author of Trading in a Nutshell. Stuart, thank you so much for coming on the phone today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been telling people that I've been going down the Chat with Traders podcast guest list, and I'm totally poaching everybody off there. And of course, your name came up, and I was like, I would love to have a chat with Stuart. Now, Stuart, you've been trading for a while, and you wrote your book, Trading in a Nutshell, all the way back in 2001, and you're on your fourth edition now, going into 21. So give us a little bit of background on who you are and how you came to be and how Trading in a Nutshell kind of evolved along the way.
Sure. I'll try to give you the short version. So back in what is a long time ago, maybe mid 90s, really when I first had the interest in the markets and stocks and trying to trade, my wife and I had some money saved up. We went to someone to get some advice on what we should do with that money. And she looked at us and said, "Oh, you're both so young. You should be investing in stocks, higher risk. You've got all the rest of the world, rest of your life to benefit." And we thought, yeah, stocks, sure. That's the start. And that got my interest. And it was, well, where do we go? Like, how do we choose? There's not one stock listed on the exchange. There's two or three, there's thousands. So which one do you pick? Well, that really, I guess, triggered a thought in my head about how do people find out which ones to buy and sell? How do they do that? That's where it all started. That's a long time ago. And then we moved to the United States in 97, 98. And that was my first foray, I guess, into cable television and seeing all the channels. Here I am coming from Australia at the time, not having a pay TV service where I had 5 channels. And all of a sudden now I've got 105. And of course, some of those were financial and they were just all day talking about markets. And I'm going, wow, this is it. This is the stuff I really should be listening to. And this is clearly going to give me an edge, an advantage. I'll go back to Australia so much better armed and educated and et cetera, et cetera. That didn't quite work out as easily as that, but it certainly sparked huge interest. And I came back and all of a sudden I had the checkbook out and I was signing up for courses and I was giving people a lot of money to learn how to do this. Well, that's now more than 20 years ago. So I was actively trading in 99, 2000, 2001, and some contact that got in touch with someone about a book. They wanted to just give a really good beginner's guide to trading. And I thought, that's me. I've actually just been through all that. I haven't been trading for 40 years, but I've just gone through the journey of getting into that beginning. How do you start? What are the first steps? That was me. I've just lived that. Mm-hmm. So got in touch with the publisher. Long story short, started writing. A lot of it got returned with red lines, just that classic, from school, big red lines through the whole page. This is no good. This is, not appropriate. Devastated by that, thinking I was pouring my heart out into trying to help people. Anyway, sure enough, at some point, the first edition was published in 2001, and it's obviously sold well enough and resonated with enough people that the publishers have wanted to support it with subsequent editions. Now the fourth edition, which continues to sell. Obviously, it still resonates with people and helps people out. So that's the short of it, of where I've got to that point of having one book. And I should just add, I think I've always wanted to write a book. I don't know why. I've just had, wouldn't that be really cool to be an author and to write a book? I just didn't know what the topic would be. And so when the opportunity, hey, you've just been through this journey, they're looking to write a beginner's guide. That's me. That would check off one of the things I've always wanted to do.
Mm.
And when your book is successful, the publisher wants you to write additional books. They want you to do another one. They want to promote. And I said, I'm done. I always wanted to write one. And when I wrote one and I could check that box, I had no more desire or motivation to write another. That's probably not common, but I checked the box. Done.
Well, you always wanted to write one.
Always.
That's what
always wanted to just be called an author for some reason.
Yeah.
I did that. I checked that box. Really didn't have much motivation to do another, but clearly the fourth edition, or the trading in a nutshell, has obviously helped. Obviously, a lot of people, I've taken it to expos and everything all around the world in my suitcases and sold it to people, and obviously people have bought it elsewhere as well.
I've shared this with the audience over the year, but my goal is to read 100 books over the course of this year, and this is definitely going in my Amazon cart right after we get off the phone here, so I can make sure I get through that one. So
that's extraordinary. That's one every 3 days. That's extraordinary.
I do a lot of audiobooks too.
Right,
but
okay.
I'm a huge believer in exercise. I don't know if you are.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I actually go for a walk, which I have heard burns more fat than running, which is crazy. But I've been going for walks for 2.5 hours a day. You can knock through a lot of books when you're two times speed, 2.5 hours a day.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Stuart, you were trading through the .com bubble. Was that? I mean, were you trading those stocks, or were you like with today's meme stocks? Like I've kind of just like let those go. Were you trading into those tech stocks back in the day?
Yeah, I was. It's a time in my trading journey I'll never forget. From around mid '99 to the end of that year into early 2000s, I was trading quite actively, probably too actively, but I didn't know any different. But I was actually starting to make some money. Things were moving so well, I could purchase them first thing in the morning, sell them 5 minutes before close, and I'd actually made money. And I didn't really do anything. Like it's almost too easy. And it was happening on a regular basis. That's how fast and how aggressive things were moving. And then that just accelerated through the early months of 2000. And things just went stupid. I mean, just really, they were quite silly. Well, sure enough, my account is just now growing at a ridiculous rate. But then something clicked, and of course it all came crashing down. And I didn't do what I was supposed to do and get out. I eventually did. And then I'd lost a lot of money. I'd actually handed it all back. And then I thought there was that revenge in me when it started to climb back up again and go, oh, it's going to happen again. It's going to be a complete, just identical to watch this happen. I'll make as much money again. So I've got in again, been very aggressive, and lost even more. And I do share this with people, where the worst part of that whole experience was telling my wife what had happened. That was the worst bit. And it was horrible. Incredibly supportive. I couldn't have asked for a better response from her, but that was the worst bit. And then over the next 3 to 4 to 5 months, when I tried to make it all back and do it again, and I lost even more, well, guess what? I had to tell my wife again. Horrible experience. That was a real turning point for me. I had to stop. I had nothing more to play with. to trade with. I was forced to stop. I then spent the next 6 months hitting the books and learning. And now this was a really key moment, because I know, and I have stood on a stage with many, many people, and I've spoken to lots of people over the years all around the world. And I know there's a healthy level of skepticism in that audience. They're not convinced that you can be successful trading the markets. They're not convinced. They've tried it, they've failed, they've made a bit of money but lost more. They talk to people there, they're struggling too. They've also got some challenges. It hasn't been successful for them. They are incredibly skeptical, and I think that's a very healthy thing. The good thing for me, and so that I think almost is an obstacle for people, because they almost look for the problems rather than the solutions. But for me, in the 12 months prior to that, I actually had made money. And I had seen it was possible, and I was convinced. I knew it was possible. I just had to do it in a different way. I had to be far better at it. I had to manage risk when I wasn't previously. I had to trade less. There were other things, but I had seen it was possible. So I had passed that massive obstacle of that skepticism and that doubt. I knew it was possible because I'd experienced it. So for me, it was just, let's keep going. Let's do this. But I think we need to fine tune. Maybe fine tune's being too generous. I really had to change significantly the way I was doing it, so far as managing risk and just the mindset, the attitude, the whole psychological part of it, and be far more conservative and just do things a lot differently. But I had been convinced, so I knew I was going to keep going. I knew there was a way to do it. So that was a real turning point. But yes, to answer your question, yes, I was quite aggressive and active during that time, but it turned out to be an incredible learning experience where I'm not sure I'd be here today had I not been through it. And sorry if I just finished. I remember reading in a few books about people saying, I lost a fortune and that was a real turning point, and I don't think I'd be successful had I not lost that fortune. And I'd read that on multiple occasions, maybe Reminiscences of a Stock Operator was one example of that. And I thought, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to lose a fortune. And that's the only pathway to being successful. I don't want to do that. Sure enough, it happened to me. I still don't wish it upon anyone, but it happened to me. I didn't want it to, but it was quite a turning point.
I'm having a really hard time just biting my tongue on this, because this is almost exactly the same route that I took. Like, as soon as you said I had to tell my wife, I don't know if you know, I smiled real big. And it wasn't because I was like, oh, look at him telling his wife. It's because, like, I've had that conversation. I know that I remember the day it happened. I'm sure you do too. I was, so when I first started trading, I lost 2/3 of my account in the first 60 days. And I remember we're driving up the Dallas North Tollway. My wife was driving, which is super unusual. And maybe that's why I remember it. But I was like, hey, listen, I got to tell you how my trading results were going. And it's not very good. And I lost some money. And she's like, how much? And I was like, well, I lost like 2/3 of the account. And I remember her like, skirt, as we're driving, she was like, how could you do this? All this, how could yous and all that stuff. And then at the end of her rant, she was like, can't you learn to trade with fake money? And I was like, why had I not thought of paper trading sooner? Stuart, I was like, I married the smartest person in the world at that point. It's like, why didn't I really think of that sooner? But yeah, I completely 100% have been down the exact same path that you're talking about there. And I share that with the podcast audience all the time. And I tell other people that I talk to, other guests and things, it's like, you've got to be vulnerable, because nobody wants to hear that you made enough money to pay off your house. Nobody wants to hear that you could just go buy that car out there with your earnings today. All they want to know is what lessons that they could learn and implement, and basically not have to pay for the tuition that you and I paid from learning on those trades. And they can take those lessons and then apply it for themselves. That's what I have found.
The statistically, the data will show that you've actually done quite well taking 60 days to lose 2/3 of your account. You have, because statistics will show that how many accounts, certainly for leverage products, how many accounts are gone within 6 weeks. So not 2/3 of the account, but pretty much all of it.
Yeah.
within half the time you're talking about. So relatively, you've done pretty well. Anyway.
I've done better since then.
No, but yeah, it's just it's a very common thing. I guess I think people just don't know what really they're getting themselves into when they start. They probably don't understand the risk. Maybe they know about it, but are not interested. That's not the sexy part of it. The sexy part is the profit.
Yeah, I think they want to understand the risk, but until they are emotionally involved in that risk for the first time or 10th time or whatever it takes for them to like
Absolutely.
understand how to move with it. I was actually doing a look at my portfolio this year, and my win rate is less than 50%. But my account is well into the green this year. And I was like, I don't think most people could handle this because my losers are, they're tiny, right? I'll just pick them off, whatever, no big deal. But then I'll let my winners run for weeks or whatever. And I mean, mentally, I could not have done that even 2 years ago. Like I couldn't have cut all those losers because it's like, no, I got to hold it just in case it comes back. Right. I think that's the difference between somebody who can be successful and obviously mathematically the person who can't be successful trading stocks.
Yeah, I think we're conditioned to be, all through schooling, we're conditioned to be right in the sense of, maybe the pass mark for a subject is 80%. Certainly for different things and different requirements through your life, the pass mark for something might be 80, 90, 70%. 50 would be the absolute bare minimum. So it's not, we're more conditioned that a success is 60, 70, 80%. And here you are having a strike rate of less than 50, and people need to be comfortable with that. They don't consider, imagine, and I've said this to many people over the years, imagine if I came into an audience of people who have never traded before, but they're very interested. And I said to them, hey, I've got this system, a set of trading rules to get you into trades, to manage the risk, to get you out of trades. And the strike rate of that system, what I mean by strike rate is the percentage of winning trades is 37%. They'd go, what?
They'll think you're crazy.
Are you kidding? Like, no, thanks. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in 80%, 70, 90, 37. How can you, that's just no measure of success is 37 or 38%. And I can say to them, no, it actually makes money. Oh, they'll just dismiss that. That's just not possible because they just don't know. But we're conditioned that how's 38 successful? How's that a pass? How's that any measure of success, being under 40%? So I think, sorry, I needed to just backtrack on something you said, which was so true. And I'm glad you raised it, was I think when managing risk, sometimes the only way people learn is to physically feel it. Physically feel it in their stomach, in their mind, their heart beating, quicker. To me, that's the only way that some people learn about how to manage risk and the importance of risk and the psychological side of things is actually physically feeling it in their body, not looking at an Excel spreadsheet and just seeing some data or some numbers, but actually physically feeling it. And you can talk to people all day about you must do this to manage risk, you must do this, must do that. Yeah, okay. And then they feel it themselves and feel the physical effect on them, and they see the consequences. Oh, now I know why Stuart said that 500 times. Now I know, and now I understand, and now I'll do something about it. Whereas previously I wasn't convinced.
So what do you think it takes for someone to get to the point where they can physically take those losses without emotionally making bad choices?
Time is probably the simple time, and the number of trades. I think over time, in fact, I know over time, we become desensitized to it all. First losing trade, it's the end of the world. Second losing trade, it's the, why am I wasting my time with this? Third losing trade, this is awful. I thought this would be much better, much different. All those early on days, the early trading days of, we're so focused on making money because that's our primary motivation to doing this for 99.9% of people. Primary motivation. And nothing to be ashamed of that. That's just why people are doing this. And all we're focused on is money and making it. And so the whole idea of losing it doesn't sit well with people, especially when they've had no experience. So I think it's time being desensitized to it. The difference between having had 3 losing trades and now you just had your 500th losing trade, but you're still trading, you're still in the game. There's a different, I think, response to the 500th and the 1,000th. I think over time we just know and understand and fully appreciate it's part of the process of trading. That's just what trading is.
Yeah.
You have some good trades, some okay trades, some fantastic trades, but then you have some ones that just don't work. And sometimes they're the ones that you really did think this would be a great trade, and it just not, and it just doesn't work out. I think over time you become desensitized, and I think you can relate that to a lot of different occupations, whether it be a surgeon physically putting in a very sharp knife into someone's thorax or something, and you go, wow, how are they, blood and stuff, how do they cope with that? Well, yeah, but that guy's done it 9,000 times. He's used to putting a knife into people.
Right.
And other things. Yes, I think it's just time you become desensitized. And I think when you have all these losing trades, but over the next 12 months, 2 years, 5 years, things are working and you're doing well and you can see improvement, you then fully appreciate that it is very much a part of the journey and it's part of the experience. You just can't get 100% right as much as you try.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you feel about position sizing?
As in how important it is, or it's position sizing is very important. I think, I guess if we go back to the most basic level, the worst thing you can do is just put all of your account into one trade and fully expose it. So if we take that next step, we need to break it into pieces, whether it be in 10 equal lots or 5 or 20 or 2. 2 is not great. Half your account's still not a good thing into one trade, one exposure, but we need to break it into pieces, but then we can take that a step further. Rather than equal pieces into each trade, we can assess the level of risk, the volatility, how far away we have our exit level from the entry, and perhaps reduce if it's further away than normal or increase if it's closer, and we can adjust according to each trade. Then we can take that a step further. If we're prepared to trade X units or lots or contracts, maybe just for the opening, we trade X divided by 2. We only trade half our normal lot. We halve the risk. If we know there's a greater than 50% chance of this trade not working out, why don't we just halve the risk right from the start?
Yeah.
But if it actually does work out, then we put in more. And then we go back to our normal position size. So there's all sorts of different ways we could, position size and manage our risk and manage our trade size. And I think it's very important we do that. I think I can still remember the time when someone finally convinced me of the importance of position sizing, breaking a capital up, allocating capital based on each individual trade's, level of risk and volatility, and why that was important. I'm not saying it's the only way to do it. I mean, an equal portion method still works. May not be the best, but it still works. Whatever it takes to stop you putting your entire capital into one trade. Whatever you need to do to avoid that, I think is a good thing.
Do you subscribe to the?
Very critical. Sorry.
I was going to ask, do you subscribe to the idea of using the ATR like the turtles would to position size?
Absolutely. I'm a huge fan of average true range. I use ATR in a more than one application. Certainly with the exits, it's a very, very important part of my stock trading, my altitude trading system, which I've spoken about to people for many, many years. The exit system, the trailing exit, uses ATR. I tell you, when I put that indicator, my exit level, on a chart, and I show it to people and they go, oh, that works really well. It trails price really well. I say to people, I cannot put in words how powerful, how effective, how useful that particular exit method has been for me. I can't put it into words. It's just been extraordinary. It's been such a valuable part of what I do. And here it is, a simple line on a chart based from some simple mathematical formula. And yet it's helping me incredibly. It's having such a huge impact and has for 20 years. So yes, I do. I also use ATR to help measure volatility in stocks and in different positions, but I'm a huge fan of ATR.
Yeah, sounds like you and I have a lot of similarities in our trading.
I was just saying about position sizing, if I may, that, trading boils down to 3 things. How do we get into a trade? How much money do we risk and how do we get out? So there's only three things we address. And the second one is related to the position sizing. How much do we risk? It's a really, really important component. And it's very closely behind how do we get out of trades so far as importance is concerned. So yes, critically important as far as I'm concerned.
I was describing to somebody the other day, one of the ways that I trade is pyramiding in, basically buying more in units. And I was like, this is the best way to trade. And the reason being is that, let's say you buy one unit and it goes down, well, then you're losing on a small amount. But if it goes up, you can buy another unit. And if it continues to go up, you continue to buy more units. And I was like, so you only really lose on your smallest position. So you can have all these small winners and you just keep stacking every time the winners move in your favor. And when they grasped that it's not an all or nothing, right? It's not either I make the moon
correct,
or I have zero.
Correct. That's spot on.
Yeah.
Spot on.
I mean, once they grasped that, it really was a light bulb moment for them that, it doesn't have to be scary, right? I'm just putting on a small amount, making sure it's working, and I'll put on the same small amount as long as it continues to work.
Spot on. Again, talking to a room of people who have never traded before, and you talk about, putting $5,000 into a trade, and you talk about profit and loss, they think if they're going to lose, that $5,000,
right?
Now, it could go, of course, but that's not how we plan it to go.
Right.
We are a little bit more careful than that. But people, I think, very binary. It's either, the profit or the loss. And they don't think of the idea of actually only making $20 on a trade. We're aiming for 2,000 or 5,000, but you could actually make 20. You could make 50. There is a lot of in-between ground. And I think your point is spot on about it. Some people think in terms of a binary. As you said, you either get to the moon or you don't.
Yeah. I took a trade off just yesterday and it was an $8 loser. And I was like, okay, you know what I mean? But it was because I followed my rules, followed my processes.
Yes, of course.
And for me, it wasn't working. And it just happened to be an $8 loser instead of a $5,000 loser. Right.
Yes.
So Stuart, give me I hope it's not trade secret, but give me like an idea of your trading system here. And obviously you don't have to go into any specifics or anything like that, but give us a high level overview of how you trade.
Sure. So I trade stocks and currencies. So I'm going to just talk about stocks. So my currencies is more active. When I say active, I'm not trading things for 5 minutes, but certainly more active than my stocks. And my stocks is more of a conservative, medium term. I want to buy things that have been in an established uptrend for like 2 or 3 months already, knowing that sometimes stocks can be in those uptrends for 3 years. So they're the sort of ones I'm looking for. So if I need to wait 2 or 3 months for it to come to my attention and say, hey, look, I've been moving well for the last 2 or 3 months, that's okay, because again, I'm looking at this I want to still be in that position in 12 months' time.
Yeah. So
I'm looking for well-established uptrend volume. I have certain volume filters. I have volatility filters. I have a sort of a rate of return. So all this is done through software. It's done through number crunching where and I've used the same software for more than 20 years. I'm the old if it ain't broke approach there. All of this is done mathematically. I'll scan 500 stocks. And within 10 seconds, it says, here you go, Stuart, here's the list of 12 that have met that criterion this week. So there's about 20 criterion in there. And I've mentioned a few of them already. But even just a rate of return, how do I tell that something has been going up over the last 3 months? Something moving from $1 to $1.02 is technically going up. But that's not good enough. A 2% move in 3 months is not what I'm after. So I have a rate of return filter in there as well. I'd have to get my laptop out here somewhere to go through every single criterion. But look, I'm looking for well-established medium-term uptrends. And when I mean medium-term, I'm talking 2 to 3 months. I got this whole idea from Stan Weinstein and his 4 stages of share stock movement.
Yeah.
And I want to get into stage 2. I see things going through stage 1. I'm not interested because I can do that for 3 years. I'm interested in something in stage 2. Would you believe I got from that book he used, correct me if I'm wrong, he used a 30-week moving average And
so I read that one earlier this year. That's on my list I've already covered. So yeah, that sounds right. The 30 week.
Yeah, and I'd never used a weekly chart, not for any great reason. I always use daily charts. I've gone 30 multiplied by 5, 150. So I've always, for 20 plus years, used a 150-day simple moving average. That's that's almost like the backbone of this entire system. Is I will never, ever, ever, and I can say ever 50 times, I'll never, ever buy something trading underneath its 150-day simple moving average, and where that simple moving average is going down, ever in my life. I just will not do it. That's counterintuitive because people want to buy things that are going down because they're becoming more and more of a bargain. But so many things we do in trading it's counterintuitive.
It totally
makes no
is.
sense.
Yeah,
makes no
absolutely.
sense at all. But anyway, so 150-day simple moving average is absolutely the backbone of that trading system, and supporting it are all these other little rules about price and volatility and rate of return. And I have a volume strength indicator. I'll share that with you, where if I'm looking for the last 2 or 3 months to be moving well, I probably want to see a small increase in volume supporting that move, aggressive demand. And so what I do is I measure the volume for the period of time before that 3 months. So I look back the 3 months before that. So let's go months 4, 5, and 6 ago. And I'll take the average volume there and I'll compare the last 3 months volume to that period. And obviously I want it to be greater. And I want it to be greater by more than 10%, for example. So that's all mathematical. And a lot of software today makes it very easy to implement something into software to track all that and measure that. So it's another thing I look for.
But at the gist of it, you are a very mathematical, formulaic trader. Would you agree?
Yes, definitely.
Gotcha.
Yes.
And that totally clicks with me, because when I see people who are drawing lines on charts, like literally just like picking 2 points and be like, okay, if it breaks this line, then it's bullish, or a flag and a pin it and all that kind of stuff. That is so left field to me. Like, it doesn't register. But when I'm looking at a moving average, for me personally, I love back testing different moving averages. So I'll look at like a 5 or 10, 20, something like that. A little bit more faster moving than what you're looking at. But if it back tests well on a 20 exponential moving average, then by all means, why wouldn't I trade it, right? With everything else lining up. And that's just how my mind works, is because I now have empirical evidence that says, hey, running on that 20 seems to work really well. It'll give you a X% over time. Or the opposite will be true, where I think a stock is great. I'll pull it up, I'll back test it real quick, and it has a negative return. I'm like, all right, moving on. Those ones hurt, because it's like I get all excited. I'm antsy to push the button, making sure everything's working. It's like, oh man, oh well, just throw it away.
And what you've described there is an example of this step-by-step sequence. I talk to people about how to develop that strategy. How do we get to the point where we have a set of rules we have confidence in? And what you just came up with was, I have made an observation about a 20-period moving average. I need to now go and validate that. I need to prove it or disprove it. Let's go ahead and do that. Maybe we make a tweak. We add this, we remove this, but we are making observations, and then we're going to go and prove and disprove, validate. And you're going to disprove more than you prove, but that's a good thing as well.
Yeah.
Because you learn about things that just don't work. And at the end of the day, we all want to find something that is going to work and we're going to have confidence in, because we're putting our own money at risk. So absolutely, we want to make sure it works. We just don't want to strive for that thing that works all the time, because you'll be wasting your time.
But I think it sets the expectation, right? Because I use TrendSpider for back testing, and it's really nice because it's all there right there on the screen. It takes seconds to do. And when I see something like Twitter, for example, and I use a 5 exponential moving average or something like that, and it returns like 157% cumulatively over X number of trades, it's like, I'm pretty confident in this trade. But on the other side, you find something that looks like it's doing great, and cumulatively it might turn out 0 or 1 or 2 or -10, something like that. It's like, this is going to be a pass for me. It just doesn't meet my criteria. It doesn't have the volatility, the positive volatility that we're looking for. And so I'll just move on. And I tell people that all the time. I'm such an advocate for backtesting because it sets the positive expectancy that helps you mentally even get into the trade. Say, hey, I know that historically this process works really well. Today may be different, but historically this should do well. So how do you do any backtesting on your end?
No, I did that a long time ago. But yes, I have done a lot of backtesting. I mean, if you think back to when I lost all that money and I had no money to trade with, that's exactly what I did. You know, I went back to school almost and I learned, and that's exactly what I did. Was I knew I just had to do things better, and be a little bit more methodical, a little bit more objective, as you say, a bit more mathematical, you know, clearly defined rules rather than, you know, me putting my hand across a big chart and just say, oh, I want the chart to do this. You know, that's not very specific. It's like putting a big hand over a small map, a map of a country, and going, I'm going to go and visit here. Where? Like, tell me where, a bit more specific.
Yeah, exactly.
So
put it on the US rules, and you have like 50 states to choose from, right?
So be a little bit more precise than that, a little bit more clearly defined. And yeah, I'm very much a yes or no. Just because those 12 stocks appear in my report, I'm not trading all 12. I'll be lucky to trade 2. But that's the great starting point. I don't have to look at 488 of them. And that to me is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't have to waste my time looking at the others.
I couldn't agree more. So, Stuart, we want to make sure that everyone gets a copy of Trading in a Nutshell.
Oh, that'd be very nice.
Where, I mean, what's about? Can we get it on Amazon? Is it on all the retailers? You tell me.
I think you can get it through Kindle. Yes. Is
okay.
Amazon, perfect. I think. Yes. I mean, my website you mentioned before.
Yes. StuartMcPhee.com. We want to make sure everyone checks that out.
My profile sort of page for people. But yeah, I think on Amazon it's available through all those various ebooks.
Oh, here's the way to do it. StuartMcPhee.com, and then click on the books button. You got the link right there.
Okay.
Perfect.
There you go. Thank you.
There we go. Well, Stuart, this has been great. I'm so glad to meet a person that has shares a lot of the synergies that I do with trading. And it's comforting to me to hear that you and I have both gone through a lot of the same experiences that, you know, helps give a lot of legitimacy to where we are today, because we know what it's like to be on the other side of the tracks.
Yes.
Stuart, what's a good takeaway that we could give our audience before we head out today?
Oh, they may not like to hear this. Put me on the spot here. I'm going to say trading is not easy. That's what I would say. Don't think it's easy. It's probably the hardest easy money there is. You know, it's just, and I don't mean to demotivate. I just really want to be very open about, you know, because I've been there myself where I was first introduced to this idea of buying and selling things. And I'm thinking, how easy can this, like, how easy will this be? All you've got to do is make 2 decisions, buy and sell. That's it. How difficult can this be?
Right.
And that was me. You know, that was me. So I went in there and lost lots of money and had no idea what I was getting myself into. I'm not saying it's beyond anybody. I'm just saying it's not as easy as you think it probably is. Therefore, just prepare your mind for a lot of work, a lot of study, a lot of testing, a lot of changing the way you view the market and changing, you know, a lot of things you have to do are counterintuitive. You have to be very disciplined, and I can mention all these other attributes. So takeaway would be, it's well worth it. Don't get me wrong. There's just tremendous benefits of this sort of profession and doing this, you know, geographical freedom, you know, doing it for yourself, et cetera, but it is just not easy. So be prepared for that and be prepared to do a lot of work if you want to be successful.
Well, I think that's a great takeaway. Stuart, thank you so much for coming on the line today.
My pleasure. Thanks very much for having me.
You're very welcome. And thank you guys for tuning into today's How to Trade Stocks and Options podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, and enable notifications. That way you never miss any of the tools, tips, and tricks we upload every single week to help you trade faster and trade smarter. I'll see you in the next episode. Okay, so what'd you think? That was pretty incredible, right? Now, if you liked that, that's only a taste, only a sample of what you're going to find in the full AI stock trading system. And I really highly encourage you to go and check this out. Obviously, you are interested in learning on how to trade, and that's why you're listening to this podcast. Now, I'm going to take and download my entire trading system that I use day in and day out onto you. And the only way I'm going to be able to do that is over at the AIStockTradingSystem.com. You're going to get phase 1, 2, and 3, several bonuses, and on top of that, I'm going to walk you through over a dozen trades that I put on inside of my account, holding your hand and showing you exactly how I got in, how I got out, how I use the artificial intelligence data, and how this could work inside of your own trading portfolio on a daily basis. So make sure you head on over to AIStockTradingSystem.com. That's AIStockTradingSystem.com to learn more and to get started and to download my decade plus worth of trading experience into your hands so you can start using the AI stock trading system today, the 5-step system to take the guesswork out of trading. Hey, if you like this video, let me know by leaving me a like below, and then subscribe and share it with somebody you think could use it as well. Be sure to comment below with your biggest takeaway from this episode and any suggestions you have for future episodes. And finally, make sure you watch these other videos to help you trade faster and trade smarter, and I'll see you on the next episode.